Hello and welcome to another interesting session with the Integrated Institute of Professional Management. My name is Princess Nnabuife, and it's so good to have you here with us today. Since the beginning of the session, we have had an interesting, insightful time with you. If for any reason you missed this class, please feel free to connect with us on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter at IIPM International to listen to it so you don't miss a thing. Today, we trust that you will have a nice time learning another subject on our course outline, and I'll be taking you on business communication. At the end of this training, you will understand the fundamentals of communication process, the various barriers of effective communication, steps of Monroe motivated sequence. You will be able to describe the various training techniques, explain the role of active listening and the role of body language for effective communication. You will know the method of writing effective emails and will also be able to understand the attention, interest, desire, action too. Now, are you ready? Okay, I think I can hear someone say, yes, I am ready. Now let's do it. Okay, so we proceed. Business communication. Business communication actually is the process of sharing information between people within or outside an organization to improve organizational practices and reduce errors. In other words, it is a process of transmitting information and understanding from one person to another or from one unit to another unit with a view to getting the desired response from the receiver. Through this process, two or more persons exchange ideas and understanding among themselves to achieve the desired effect in the behavior of another person. All right, so we can also say that it is a two-way channel of transmitting ideas, feelings, plans, commands, instructions, reports, and suggestions that influences the attitude towards an organization's objectives. The communicator's goal is to convey the meaning or ideas without distortion. And realistically speaking, the success of any business owner or manager or even leader in his enterprise depends largely on adequate, systematic, and effective communication. It is true that communication is very important in all walks of life. The relevance of good communication in a business transaction determines the level of success to be expected. You will agree with me that a very fantastic business setup having a very bad communication strategy is bound to meet a gridlock and eventually fail, right? Aha. So no business venture starts with the intention of failing. And that is why a good businessman seeks to have good business strategy that will keep him in business and help him grow, to achieve his goals. Why is business communication actually important? Well, this is because it is about how information is sent and received within firms. It is crucial for working successfully with others. It enables one to maintain very good relationships. It also allows to accomplish tasks while working with both individuals and groups. Apart from that, it motivates, it helps to overcome obstacles, it creates a comfortable, trustful, and psychologically safe feeling. Now, let's consider some components of communication process. In a simple communication, we have the sender and the receiver. The sender is the participant transmitting the message, while the receiver is the participant receiving the information, as you can see in the pictorial illustration here. We have two people here, a female and a male, and the female is the sender, while the male is the receiver of the information. Okay, so while the sender speaks, the receiver translates the words or symbols to or encoded message into thoughts or ideas. So the encoder here is saying something. It's saying red rose is beautiful. And the decoder is immediately translating those words to meaning. He imagines a rose, and then decides whether to agree or disagree with the information, with the idea transmitted by the decoder. Here we see the receiver of the message agreeing with the message transmitted. As a matter of fact, all this takes place in split seconds. So if the decoder had said, the sales of red roses is good business, the decoder immediately thinks of the viability of such ideas. And he's going to do that by putting the environment and other factors into consideration. Okay, and so at the end of the day, he's going to have to either agree or disagree with that thought. Now, having said that, it's important that we take a look at other components of the communication process. There are 5 of them. I call them the CCPPB. That is the channel, content, perception, purpose, and barrier. Okay, so you can see that on the screen right now. The route through communication takes place is the channel, the situation or the environment in which communication occurs, which includes time, place, and social, psychological factors are the context. And then a person's understanding or interpretation of a particular event or message is the perception. Whatever the sender and receiver intend as the outcome of the communication becomes the purpose. And if there are any interferences with effective communication by way of noise or an unknown language, which is also interpreted as noise, then that is a barrier. I hope we understand this. Speaking of noise, it can be very frustrating when you're trying to pass on information, but something keeps distorting your message by interfering with the communication process. Noise can take many forms. It can be loud music playing in the background, another person trying to enter your conversation with an unwanted signal, or any other distraction that prevents the receiver from paying attention. To ensure that your communication, you're communicating in the clearest and effective way possible, the 7 C's of communication must be adhered to. Apart from these 7 C's of communication, you would not really encode properly. You would not, the receiver would not decode your message properly. So we are going to discuss the 7 C's of communication that would help us to be effective in our communication. All right, there are 7 of them. The very first is clarity. Clarity. Now, when writing or speaking to someone, you must be clear about your message. Ask yourself, what is my purpose of communicating with this person? We have said earlier that whatever the sender and receiver intend as the outcome of the communication, it becomes the purpose. So if you are not sure what your purpose is, then the person you're talking to or your audience, as the case may be, will not be sure of what you're trying to say either. So to be clear, it is advisable to try to minimize the number of ideas you're putting forward in each sentence. Make sure that it is easy for people to understand what you mean. Apart from clarity, something else is very important for effective business communication, and that is the next C, completeness. In a complete message, the person or audience you're talking to has everything they need to be informed and possibly to take action. Now here comes another C, conciseness. When you're concise in your communication, you stick to the point and you do something else again, you keep it brief. People who are talkative in nature would find this a huge challenge because somehow they believe that they are better able to pass their message with the use of so many words. Interestingly, the point may have already been made in your first three sentences. Now, so as not to drown the point you're trying to make, no matter how tempting it is to go overboard, keep it concise, brief, and straight to the point. Do you know something? I'll tell you this. People would appreciate it better when they don't have to spend so much time wondering what the point wonder when the point will eventually be made, especially when you're talking and you won't stop talking. This strategy gives you a professional look, and people will be more inclined to taking you seriously when you are brief and straight to the point. Now we are going to talk about another amazing C, that is consideration. When you're considerate, you endeavor not to confuse your listener. You strive as much as possible to be coherent and all points will be connected and relevant to the main topic, and your tune will flow at a very consistent level. So, consideration should reflect in your attitude, the way you talk, the tone of your voice, how you talk. The flow of the message would show that you really are considerate to your listener. Now, here comes another C, correctness. How correct or accurate is the information you're disseminating? As a businessman or woman, do you give misleading information, exaggerate or tell outright lies about the quality of your product or services? A lot of people do this to get attention, but eventually the truth always finds its way out and the whole process becomes counterproductive. So, the dissemination of accurate information is very important. We have another C coming up, and that is concreteness. Make your message be solid with a clear picture in the mind of your listener so that your message can be properly understood. Don't muscle things up. Make your message very solid. Paint a very clear picture. People listening will not have to spend half of the time trying to imagine what exactly you're talking about. Okay, so solid message, concreteness. All right, another one, which of course is the last one, the seventh of the C's is courtesy. Courtesy. Cautious communication is friendly, open, and honest. There are no hidden insults or passive aggressive notes or tones and all that. No. In business, people are more receptive to courteous and empathetic people. That simple, good morning, sir, with a broad smile and happy eyes that says, I'm happy to be at your service, can go a long way to open doors and bring positive results. So, those are the 7 C's of effective business communication. Practice these things and you'll be amazed at the outcome you get. Now, that leads us to the 8th dimension of communication. I hope we're all together. Okay, now we have the dimensions in communication. Communication is not just a straight one jacket way of conversing. No, we have a lot of technicalities that would help you to get the result you intend to get. And one of these is verbal. As a matter of fact, we have verbal, non-verbal, mediated, unmediated, congruent message, incongruent message, explicit message, and implicit message. The verbal message is what I've been doing since the start of this class. I have a channel of communication. My content is clear. I believe that so far you're getting the right interpretation of the message I've been trying to encode. And the purpose of this class is that you learn about business communication. And by the end of this class, I believe that you would have a positive outcome. With a non-verbal communication, message is sent by means of body posture, body movement, how you touch yourself or the person you're communicating with, the tone of your voice, whether it's sultry, husky, demanding, suggestive, or calm and gentle. You can also send a message through eye contact. I remember when I was growing up as a kid, uh, we would be seated in the sitting room, for example, and visitor would come visiting. My parents didn't have to verbally tell us to leave the sitting room when the visitor arrives. All they get to do is try to establish eye contact, and the message is sent. We knew automatically that we needed to disappear. I'm sure you can relate to that as well. Okay, so that is with nonverbal communication. We have other forms of communication, like I've mentioned earlier, the mediated, unmediated, congruent message, incongruent message, explicit message, and implicit message. I really would love you to get this training manual and endeavor to read on this so you get to find out other interesting things about the dimensions in communication. Okay, so we are going straight to the channels of communication. Aha. So if you've been following, we're now in channels of communications. And here we'll take a look at how communication works in organizations. Every organization has its own communication pattern. In most organizations, information flows either from top to bottom or bottom to top, up and or down the hierarchy chain between the managers and the subordinates. This system of communication is known as vertical communication. In some other cases, communication gets to pass through departments. Say, for example, if a certain information is emanating from the factory operative department, it goes to the production department. That's an example, okay? They scrutinize that information in the production department, then make comment on it, and then also pass it to the marketing department. Okay, now the marketing department in turn will make their own observation or suggestion and then send it to the finance department. The finance department will look at it and send it to, the next department. The information will travel on the lateral chain until it gets to the final point where the ultimate decision is made. As you can see on the chain here, you see the board of directors, the finance, marketing, production, finance officers, marketing assistants, factory operative, different departments or functions. It's a lateral chain. Okay, so the blue arrow shows the lateral chain, while the red arrow shows the vertical chain. All right. Yeah. So whether the communication flows on a lateral or a vertical chain, communication is not complete until feedback has been received. I'd like to take that again. Whether communication gets to flow on a lateral or on a vertical chain, communication is never said to be complete until feedback has been received. As beautiful as communication may be, it has some barriers. Let's consider some of them. One barrier of effective communication is inaccurate interpretation. This happens mostly in nonverbal communication. Imagine if, for example, we are in a room, I look at you, I wink, and then I smile. I have a very broad smile. So I look at you and I smile. But then you, out of the abundance of your kindness and generosity, you decided to offer me a handkerchief to probably remove the particle in my eyes that's probably making me to blink. Do you think that that lovely, amazing gesture is an accurate interpretation of my non-verbal message? Okay, let me paint the scenario again. We are both in a room, and then I look at you and I wink. And not just winking alone, I gave you a very broad smile. And then you, being a very warm, generous, and kind person, decided to give me a handkerchief to wipe my eye, for blinking. Probably I have some particles in my eyes that's making me blink. And my question now is this: does that lovely gesture in any way accurately interpret my non-verbal message? Absolutely not. You agree with me that a wink and a broad smile has nothing to do with having any particle in the eye. So it's an inaccurate interpretation. Another barrier to effective communication is selective perception. Selective perception. Yeah. This involves selecting only certain elements from a message and leaving out the rest. Selective listeners. You must have heard of the story of a man. Yeah, that reminds me of a story. A man who called his wife to inform her that on his way back from work, just before the T junction, immediately after the mega filling station, he was involved in an accident. And sadly, some people lost their lives. And the most painful part, according to this man, is instead of receiving help from people, passers-by were busy either taking photos of the accident scene or robbing the victims. He was also robbed too, and everything was taken except for his cell phone. Anyway, thankfully, Sandra took him to the hospital and is currently in the intensive care unit. Now, after telling this pathetic, horrible story, the wife responded with a single question. My dear, who is Sandra? Hmm? She didn't even ask how bad he was injured or the name of the hospital he was taken to, or, any of those questions you would expect to be asked, in a circumstance like that. No, her interest was on who is Sandra? Selective perception, huh? All right. Now, this barrier causes a lot of problems in the workplace and even at home, sadly. So we need to be very careful, very, very careful. Number three is linguistic impact on language. So the style, tone, speed of English language, for example, differ from one English speaking country to another. The Irish style of English is different from that of the Americans, the British, Australians, Canadians, or even the Swedish. Now, as Africans, we might have a hard time understanding everything they say, and that could be a barrier to an effective communication. You agree with me, right? A lot of people who failed the IELTS exam complained about not being able to understand what they say in the listening comprehensive passage, so, and that's largely because the English used there is not the same as the Nigerian English. So a lot of people have serious problems trying to understand what is being said. So that is linguistic impact on language. It could be a huge barrier. Number four, we have the semantics. The different perceptions or meanings that different people attach to the same word can also cause a huge barrier to communication. Okay, so the other things that can affect communication, that is physical weakness, tiredness, spelling problems, punctuation, sentences, environments, all of that could also cause a barrier for effective communication. And then expressing emotion, being defensive, negative, assertive, conflicts in religious beliefs, for example, political views and values, personality, experiences, lack of confidence, all of this could badly attack an effective communication. Gender, yeah, roles, expectations, and traditions associated with either gender could be a huge problem. There's some places where women are not expected to speak, where you have men. In those places, probably I'm not supposed to talk to you because I know that a lot of people who are listening to me right now are men. So in those places, I am not supposed to talk to men in public. No, no, it is not done. So, and imagine if the female has a lot of wisdom to share. No, let me not use the word wisdom to share. Let's say she has some very important ideas she needs to share. And because she's not expected to talk in public, she gets to keep it to herself or probably tell it to her husband or an older man who come out and present the ideas and make it his, you know. So it could be a barrier to effective communication. And then cultural differences, the use of jargons, culture related idioms and expressions could differ from one place to another. So if this, for example, means something here, and then that same thing means something else in another language or in another cultural expression, it would cause a huge barrier to effective communication. Okay, so there are really a lot of other things that could affect effective communication, that could affect effective communication. A whole lot of other things can be responsible for that. But so far, we've been able to see all the 8 barriers of communication, and that leads us straight to another very important thing. I see this to be really interesting. When we talk about effective communication, Monroes motivated sequence cannot be ignored. In truth, it is very easy for some of us to talk persuasively and to motivate people through our speeches. However, for some others, the act of making speeches and presentations does not come naturally. Not at all. You can use a Monroe's motivated sequence to help improve your persuasive skills and your confidence. Monroe's motivated sequence was developed by Alan H. Monroe, the Purdue University professor. He used the psychology of persuasion to develop an outline for making speeches that would deliver results. What are these sequences? Step 1. Capture the interest of your audience through questions, interesting facts, humor, or storytelling. Step 2. Convince the audience that there is a need for a change. Step 3. Define your solution for the needs. Step 4. Give a detailed description of a picture of success or failure, as the case may be, and motivate the audience to agree with you and adopt similar behaviors, attitude, and beliefs. Step 5. That's the last part, right? Yeah. Give your audience specific things they can do to solve the problem. Motivate them to take action. Monroe believed that the use of psychology of persuasion always yields good results. There is no harm in systematically experimenting these 5 steps to see if you will get results too. Questioning is a very important aspect of business communication, and it has some techniques that could ensure that you are able to gather better information quickly. Learn more about a situation, build stronger relationships, manage people more effectively, and ultimately avoid misunderstandings. One of these questioning techniques is the use of open questions. Open questions bring about longer answers, and these questions usually begin with what, why, how. When you ask a person a question using such keywords, you expect the respondent to give you a detailed narration about his or her knowledge, opinion, or feelings concerning a particular matter. Another technique is the use of closed questions. Closed questions generally evoke a single word or very short factual answer. Example of these are, do you love me? Are you hungry? Are you angry? Do you want it? These are examples of closed questions. Simply put, closed questions require either a yes or a no for an answer. Number 4. Number 3, actually, and that is funnel questions. Asking funnel questions involves starting with general questions and then zooming in on a point in each answer. Then you move on to asking more and more details at each level. Hence, generally, when using funnel questioning, start with closed questions, but as you progress through the funnel, you start using more open questions. Now, let's use this example. How many people were involved in the fight at the production department yesterday? About 7? Wow. Was it only the staff at the production department that were involved in the fight? Ah, staff from marketing department joined the fight too. Did anybody sustain any serious injury? Oh, no one did, huh? Okay. So what was responsible for the fight? So you see, systematic questions like this can help you get the details you need for your report or for your personal consumption. Now, number 4, probing question. Probing questions are asked to find out more details or gain clarification. In such questions, you use questions that include the word exactly to probe further. You could ask, who exactly started the fight? Or, who exactly threw the first punch? So when you say that, when you ask questions like that, you want a definite, exact answer. So probably the person who started the fight was Mr. Adams. The person who threw the first punch was Mr. Steven. So you get your answers straight. We have the leading questions and the rhetorical question. Yeah, I like you to read about this at your leisure time because you'll find these other aspects of questioning very interesting. We've talked extensively about questioning techniques. Now let us talk about listening. One of the most important aspects of communication is listening. I'm sure you agree with that. Listening attentively can have a significant influence on your job effectiveness and on the quality of relationships with others. It is said that active listening involves making conscious efforts to hear not only the words of the speaker, but also to understand the complete message being sent. So there is a huge disparity, a very big difference between hearing and listening. You can listen to me, but may not be really, you can hear me, but you may not really be listening to me. Of course, that's very possible. But when you're listening, it means you are paying attention. You are showing that you are listening to me. You show that you're listening either by your facial expression or gesticulation. You provide feedback where and when necessary. You defer judgment by allowing the speaker finish speaking and not interrupt him with counter arguments. And lastly, you respond appropriately. Yeah. So these are the 5 key elements of active listening that would help in actively listening to the speaker. When you do all of this, you help that person know that you are together, you can hear them, and you're listening. And when you ask questions, you can give an appropriate response. That is active listening. Earlier, we had talked about body language as a non-verbal communication. Remember, right? Yeah. So, as an important point to keep in mind is that the body language may vary from individual to individual and between cultures and nationalities. So, we must be careful of how we use body posture, manner of speech, eye contact, facial expression, tone of voice, and gestures with hands and arms to pass a message. We have to be really careful. It will be wrong if we use our body language to give false information. It will be wrong if we deceive other people by the things we're saying with our body language. So you need to be sure what you're doing. If you decide to go with non-verbal communication, you have to be purposeful, be sure of what you're doing so you don't give misleading information. Okay. All right, so here are the common signs of body language. We have the posture, we have the speech, eye contact, tone of voice, gestures with the hands, and all of that. All this shows that all components of body language. Okay. All right. What about giving feedback? Feedback is a type of communication that we give or get. It is a critical assessment or suggestions made for improvement, and it is crucial in communication as it helps to have honest relationships. So when you give or receive feedback, it helps to let people know how effective they are in what they are trying to accomplish. It helps you to know where you're getting things wrong, where you must improve on, and basically how people feel about your work. Okay, so these are feedbacks and why it's important for you to get feedback. Now, getting feedback from other people is really very important. Some people accept feedback because they believe they can grow from it. Yeah, of course. When you give feedback, and then no, when you receive feedback, it helps you know your strengths and your weaknesses and helps you grow. Getting feedback helps us to learn about our abilities, to communicate by verifying messages and determining if the objective of communications are being met. How to be open to feedback. Some people really don't take feedback very they don't take it well, especially when the feedback is a negative one. You know, they maybe on the advice of someone, they decide, okay, let me know how people feel about my products, my services. And then they throw out a questionnaire, and then people bring in negative feedback and they get so angry, they respond really bad, they get depressed in most cases, you know, but that is not how to progress if you really want to get if you really want to be successful in your business. You don't dive into depression because you got negative feedback from people who are using your product or your service. No, you must be open to feedback. Be open and welcome people's feedback and questions. Be aware of nonverbal communication, okay? Then make sure that your nonverbal communication encourages feedback. All right. Ask questions. It's very important. Ask questions. How do you like my products? How do you like our services? Would you like to come back again? Would you like to buy this again? How would you feel if it's improved on? Is there something about it you like to be changed? Those are questions. And when you ask those questions, it helps you to get specific feedback. It helps you to know what exactly you need to do, what exactly you're doing wrong, what exactly you need to improve on. So ask questions. Paraphrase the speaker to convey that you have listened and understood the speaker. when the person is giving you probably a verbal feedback, paraphrase what the person is saying, summarize it, so you be sure that you are getting the real message the person is sending. Okay, so this would help you to improve on the quality of your product delivery, or your product and your service delivery. So that is it about feedback. I love feedbacks. You should too. Now, this brings us to conducting effective meetings. You know, some organizations have the custom of having meetings on Mondays. Do you have that at your workplace too? Are your weekly meetings held on Mondays, like every Mondays, or maybe once in a month, the beginning of the month or end of the month? Well, most organizations like to have theirs every week on Mondays. You see, people in general do not like to waste their time having boring, unnecessarily lengthy meetings. If you have a meeting, if you leave a meeting feeling drained and cannot really tell what the objective of the meeting was, then it wasn't an effective one. So, running efficient and successful meetings is a key skill that many people do not have, but they must learn it in order to grow in their career. Now, this is more than just sending out a notice that your team is to meet at a particular time and place, and then you show up having a very mean look to show that the meeting is a serious one. No, no, that's not what we're talking about. To have an effective meeting, the meeting should be an objective one. It should be an objective one. It shouldn't last forever. Just a minimum amount of time is needed for each deliberation. And at the end of the meeting, the participant should be able to leave the meeting feeling that a sensible process has been followed. If this is lacking, then the entire process should be evaluated and the right action must be taken. So meetings, very important. Very important. It helps your organization to move forward. It helps you know what you need to do, where you stand, how your subordinates are faring, what they need to do better. It helps you know what really to do. So meetings are very important and shouldn't be treated like a trivial thing, and should never be converted to a family meeting. It's a serious thing and should be given utmost priority and importance. Another important aspect of business communication is writing reports. Have you ever written a report? What kind of reports did you write? Was it a sales report, inspection report, annual report, audit report, feasibility report, progress report, white papers, technical writing report, or maybe a proposal, a user manual, or a technical manual? If you've ever had to write a report for a meeting, a conference, seminar, or an event, then this topic is for you. Writing a report is not the same as letter writing. In academia, there is some overlap between reports and essays, and the two words are sometimes used interchangeably. First step is to define the problem. That is when you're writing a report, define the problem. Okay, now when you define the problem, the step 2 is to gather the necessary information. In step 3, analyze the information you've gathered. In step 4, organize the information. And then step 5, write the report. Essentially, a report is supposed to be a short, concise document that is written for a particular purpose. It describes the sequence of events, evaluates the facts or results of a research, recommends a course of action, and then conclusion. Once you identify the basis for your report, you can begin to collect supporting information, then sort and evaluate that information. And then the next step is to organize your information and then put it together in an outline. With proper planning, it is easier to write your report and stay organized. Start with a title. Have a summary. No, it is actually called an executive summary. So have an executive summary that consists of the major points. Have an introduction, which will simply be why you're writing the report. Then have a main body, and finally, conclusions or recommendation based on your findings. Make sure your points stand out and are very clear. So when you follow these things, it will help you to write very effectively. Your report would be amazing. Okay, writing emails has some technicalities too if you want to keep it professional. The following are a few points to be considered to write effective emails. You see that subject line immediately under the destination email address? That line, when you're about to send an email, there is a subject line that is immediately under the destination address, destination email address. Use it as headlines. So write a subject that grabs the reader's attention. Okay, for example, you could say something like lose weight the easy way. That is if you're offering a service or you're offering something that can captivate people, and your target is probably overweight persons, and you want to get them to read that email that will help them know how to do what they need to do to lose weight, in a very safe way. You just put it that way. If you're offering a service too, or maybe it's a product and you have to send a newsletter or something like that, that subject line should have a captivating heading, okay? That would, get the person to want to see what really your email is about. Then next, write 1 point per email. If you need to communicate with someone about a number of different things, consider writing a separate email on each subject. Don't, I repeat, do not give in to the temptation of writing out all the different topics in one email. Don't do that. It might be convenient, yes, but it will be very tacky and very unprofessional. We at Integrated Institute of Professional Management want you to be professional. So we advise that you do not send a tacky email. You should never make your email look unprofessional. All right. Another thing you must do is specify the response you want. Make sure to include in your email any call to action you want, such as a phone call or follow-up appointment. Then make sure you include your contact information, including your name, title, and phone numbers at the base of the email. It makes it easier to reach you or contact you subsequently. So that's very important. An internal email, yeah, internal emails, just like other emails, should not be too informal. Sometimes you might just be tempted to make it informal because it's an internal email. Please don't do that. Always use your spell checkers. Avoid slangs or the use of words that you are not sure of the meaning. Avoid using abbreviations too. Ensure to be brief and straight to the point. Now that brings us to the final topic on business communication. Are you still with me? I'm having fun here. Okay, now we are on attention, interest, desire, action, and the acronym is AIDA. What really is AIDA? What really is AIDA? AIDA is a model that is widely used in marketing and advertising to describe the steps or stages that occurs from the very first moment a customer or a consumer is aware of a product or a brand to the actual moment the purchase is made. As a matter of fact, many consumers become aware of brands through advertising or marketing communication. As a matter of fact, the very, very first time I ever heard about Jumia was on an advert on TV saying that you can be in the comfort of your house and shop globally. And I was like, wow, this is great. I'm sure if you take a pause right now and think for maybe 10 seconds, you would think of some products or services you never knew about prior to seeing them on an advert. You know, they will all come to your mind, right? So think about it right now. What product or service did you get to hear about for the first time when it was advertised? Maybe you saw it on the billboard, or you saw it on the internet, or on TV, or you heard about it in a jingle on radio. You know, I'm sure you probably have come across a couple of them. So essentially, the ADA model helps to explain how an advertising or marketing communication message engages and involves consumers in brand choices. In business communication, you need to use the ADA approach when you write a piece of text that has the ultimate objective of getting others to take action. Every kind of writing is written with one purpose in the mind of the writer, and that is to capture the reader's attention. So whenever it is, whether it is a report you're writing, a presentation, an advertisement, an email, or any other form of writing, effective writing is the key to success. So use the AIDA model to attract the people's attention using powerful catching words to captivate their interest and appeal to their personal needs, wants, and desire, and then inspire them to take action. And in business, it could be that at the end of the day, you want them to patronize your product or services. So use catching words. Words are very powerful, you know. If you use them skillfully, you'll be amazed at the results you get. It will feel almost like you're using a remote control with which you can control people's emotions and actions and reactions. So master the art of communication and use it to grow your business. Very important. So when you use the AIDA, that is the attention, interest, desire, action model, it helps you to get results. It helps you to get intended results. Very powerful. Really, it is very powerful. So what have we learned so far? What have we learned so far? So far, we have learned the various components of the communication process, that is participants, echoing, decoding, channel, context, perception, purpose, and barriers. We learned that the communication between managers and subordinates, whether from top to bottom or bottom to top of the hierarchy chain, is known as vertical communication. And when it is between departments or functions, it is called lateral communication. I hope you remember that point. I hope you remember. Yeah? Okay. We also discussed the Monroes motivated sequence, which includes getting attention of people, establishing the need, satisfying that need, visualizing the future, actualization of it. Okay, I don't know if you remember that point too. And then next, we talked about the various questioning techniques that could be used to extract information. We mentioned some of this. We talked about the open questions. Do you remember them? Okay, we talked about the closed questions too. We talked about funnel questions, mentioned the probing question, rhetorical questions, and leading questions, right? Then finally, we talked about the amazing AIDA model of communication and how powerful it could be when it is used skillfully. Okay, so I'm sure we've learned a lot from this class. Please feel free to ask questions. We'll be very happy to give you further clarification on this topic. So this is how we come to the end of this class. Very happy that I had an amazing time talking to you, and I'm sure you had an insightful time learning about business communication. I am Princess Nnabuife, and once again, you're welcome to the Integrated Institute of Professional Management. Thank you.